Sharon was upset, really mad, especially at me, her husband. I'm Frank Miller. How could I tell she was mad? Simple. While I was driving us back from a party thrown by her friends Anne and Hank Vanderlink, she squeezed herself into the corner of the seat, trying to be as far from me as possible while still in the car, and she had a frown so deep it seemed like it could turn milk bad. Why was she so mad at me? Honestly, I think she had a good reason to be mad because I completely messed up her night. I feel terrible for embarrassing my wife of 10 years and the mother of our 3 kids. I pulled such a boneheaded move. So, what did I do to embarrass her and ruin her night? I grabbed the wrong key. You know, the Vanderlinks throw some wild parties, and my wife suddenly wanted to get in on the action. Unfortunately, I wasn't into it. We'd never been to one of their parties before, but my wife managed to score an invite through a friend of a friend. My wife, who I've been married to for a decade, forgot to mention that this party was different. She didn't tell me beforehand that at this party, all the wives were supposed to throw their house keys into a bowl. Then, the husbands would blindly pick a key and take the corresponding wife to the master suite for a night of, well, you know, not so innocent fun. As the party was winding down, I suddenly realized what was going to happen, and I freaked out. I've never been so mad at Sharon before. I grabbed her arm and took her into the kitchen. "Did you know this party was going to end like this?" I asked her. She smirked at me. "Yeah." "And you didn't think to tell me before we came?" "No, because I knew you wouldn't agree unless you had to." "I definitely won't agree, and I always have a choice. Let's leave." "We can't leave now. It wouldn't be polite. You'll embarrass me. Plus, it's just for one night. It'll add some excitement to our marriage. I can do without that kind of excitement. Let's leave." "We need some excitement, Stan. I need it. Just for one night, I want to be more than just a wife and mother. It's only one night, and it won't happen again. Besides, I already put our key in the bowl, so we can't back out now." "No way, it's not too late," I said firmly, grabbing her arm and pulling her back into the living room, where everyone was gathered around the bowl full of keys, ready to pick their partner for the night. Sharon tried to resist, but I let her go and approached the bowl. "I wasn't told about this part of the party," I announced loudly. "I'm not sharing my wife with any of you." I searched until I found our house key with the red plastic cover, took it out, and faced the surprised group. "I wasn't informed about the rules beforehand. I don't believe in cheating, and my marriage vows mean everything to me." Some people grumbled and gave me angry looks, but I didn't care. I looked at my wife, who was furious. "Sharon, you have a choice to make right now. Come with me and forget this craziness, or stay and never come home again. I'm leaving." All eyes turned to my wife, who was now red-faced with embarrassment. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke up. "I'm sorry for my husband's behavior. I'd love to stay, but I better leave given the circumstances." And with anger and reluctance, she followed me out to the car. "You're such a selfish jerk," she yelled at me. "How could you embarrass me like that in front of everyone? We'll never get invited back there again." "Embarrass you, Sharon? What about how you embarrassed me by not telling me about your plan to be with someone else tonight?" "Well, you were going to be with another wife, so we both would have had fun." "I don't want to be with another woman, Sharon. I reserved that for you. And it's unsettling to hear after 10 years of marriage that you want to be with someone else. It would just be one time, Frank. Out of all the nights we've spent together, it's just one night with someone else. After being a good wife for 10 years, isn't that reasonable?" "Actually, Sharon, it's not. I can't believe what I'm hearing, but this obviously means a lot to you, doesn't it?" "Yes, Frank, it does. I've been looking forward to this for weeks. It's my chance to be more than just a wife and mother, to have an adventure, to be admired, and to have some fun with another man for a few hours." "Do you mean your night with someone other than your husband?" "Well, that's a bit blunt, but yeah, that's a big part of it, probably the biggest part, yeah." I slammed on the brakes, did a U-turn in the street, and raced back to the Vanderlinks' house. Sharon screamed when I turned around. "What are you doing, Frank?" "If spending a night with another man means that much to you, Sharon, then go ahead and do it." I stopped in front of their house. It looked like all the other cars were still there. "Looks like you're not too late to join in. Get out, enjoy your night with some random guy. I hope he satisfies you in ways I can't. Frank, it's just something new, an adventure. You're perfect for me, but you know I can't go in there alone. We both have to participate, each with a new partner." "I already said I want no part of it, Sharon. I've never cheated on you and won't until we're not married anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means exactly what I said. It's decision time for you, Sharon. So if you're going for it, go be with your cheating friends. They'll definitely welcome a beautiful woman like you into their little scheme, even without her husband. Sharon reached for the door handle, then hesitated. I could tell she was thinking hard. Her tone softened. Would you pick me up tomorrow morning, Frank? You know, from wherever I end up, I'll call and let you know. It would mean a lot to me. Not a chance, but I'm sure your new guy will give you a ride after spending the night with you. You're making it sound so bad, Frank. He won't be my lover, just someone I'm having closeness with for one night. I love you, Frank. You're the only man for me. Do you really believe that? There's no way you could love me and do what you're planning. Let me get this straight. You just want someone new for intimacy, right? You want a new guy to impregnate you? That's harsh, Frank. You know I'm on birth control, so I won't get pregnant. It's just one night with someone new. It'll be thrilling. Ever wondered what it's like to be with someone new? Just a new experience with different feelings. Everything fresh. Trust me, it'll spice things up for us. Enjoy your time with someone new, Sharon. I hope you realize what you're doing. It's only one night, Frank. That's not asking too much. Even a moment is too much. We have the rest of our lives together. We won't have anything together if you go through with this. You're blowing this out of proportion, Frank. I won't let you ruin this night for me. I just want a little time with someone new, and you're not going to stop me. I'm going through with it, and you need to accept it. Got it? Tomorrow morning, I'll be back, and I'll make you forget all about this. Tomorrow, you'll be in the past. I won't desire you anymore after you've let another man have what I thought was mine alone. Now you're being ridiculous. I belong to you, and you'll still want me. I'll make sure of that. Sharon, listen to me. If you go back into that house, we're done. Your one night will cost you your marriage and your family. No, Frank, it won't. We're married, and we'll stay that way. We're meant to be together. I love you, and I know you love me. We'll get through this, I promise. I'll make it right. You're breaking my heart, Sharon. Don't be so dramatic. Think of it as sending me on an adventure. It's an adventure for you, but it's the end for us. Stop talking nonsense, Frank. I'll change your mind in the morning, and you know how. Do you really think I'd touch you after you spent the night with someone else? You'll touch me, Frank, and much more. I'll make sure of it. God, I never realized how foolish you are. Get out. My words surprised her, but she opened the car door and started to step out. I'll see you tomorrow morning, Frank. I sadly shook my head and sighed. No, Sharon, you won't. And as soon as she pushed the door to close it, I hit the accelerator and spun away, leaving skid marks for half a block. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror as I sped down the street. She looked completely shocked, standing there on the curb with her mouth open. She hadn't moved when I turned the corner and she disappeared from sight. I hoped she would call me right away, admitting she was wrong and asking me to come back for her. But she didn't. Oh, she probably thought I'd be upset for a couple of days, then she could smooth things over by bringing me to bed. Well, she was completely wrong. My dad always said that if a woman was considering cheating, she'd already mentally crossed that line. And if a married woman was seriously contemplating it, she'd already broken her vows. It's okay to admire someone, but if she's plotting how to make it happen, she's already betrayed you. As much as it hurts, she ended our marriage, and it's time to move forward. The real tragedy is our 3 kids, 9-year-old Jocelyn, 8-year-old Rebecca Ann, and 4-year-old Frank Jr. How could I imagine life without them every day? But I couldn't let Sharon's actions slide without consequences. The kids were with my mom for the weekend, giving me time to figure out my next steps. I drove around aimlessly for a while, still holding out hope that Sharon would call and ask me to pick her up. But it became clear that she'd made up her mind. I finally decided on a plan and drove home. Just as I pulled into the driveway, my phone rang. I hoped it was Sharon asking me to come get her, but the caller ID showed it wasn't her. I answered anyway. There was loud music and laughter in the background, and a man spoke. Hey, Frank, it's Rick Wilson from the party you left. Your wife gave me your number. She's hoping I can talk some sense into you. She's really excited about tonight and wants you to be a part of it too. You're a lucky guy. Every guy here hopes they'll get her key. She keeps saying someone's in for a memorable night. Come back and join us. There are some hot ladies here eager to have fun with you. Go to hell, Rick Wilson, you manipulative bastard. And screw everyone else at your party, including my cheating wife. I hope you all suffer horrible fates. I hung up and went inside. It took me less than 20 minutes to pack 2 suitcases with enough clothes for a week or 2. I grabbed my laptop and shaving kit and loaded everything into the car. I searched for our wedding license, tore it into pieces, then smashed my wedding ring with a hammer. It took a few hits to flatten it, But once I did, I placed the pieces on Sharon's pillow, locked the door, and drove off into the night. I wanted to find a motel a few miles outside of town, but first, I swung by the Vanderlinks' place again. Some cars had already left the party, and a few people were outside chatting as they paired up for the night. I didn't see Sharon, so I figured she had either left with her new partner or was with Mr. Vanderlink himself. The motel I found was in the next town over. It didn't look fancy, but it had parking in the back, which would keep my car out of sight if anyone happened to be looking for it. After securing the car, I bought a six-pack of Newcastle from the convenience store next door and decided to watch some TV. The first two beers calmed me down, and as I opened the third, my phone rang. It was Sharon, but since I knew she wasn't calling for me to pick her up, I let it go to voicemail. Frank, you're being dramatic about this. Rick Wilson told me what you said to him. I've told you countless times, it's just one night. I'm just trying something new with one guy, and that doesn't make me a bad person. I promise, even if I'm a little sore, I'll make it up to you when I get home tomorrow. Oh, and since you took our house key out of the bowl, they made a new one for me. The guy who got it is named Glenn, and he seems nice. He's married with kids like us. Since you're at our house, I went home with him. His wife and her partner for the night are here too, but they're in a different part of the house, far enough away that we won't hear each other when things get heated. You know how loud I can be when we're together, she giggled. Listen, I know you're upset, but I promise I won't let him do anything we haven't done. I told Glenn we should keep it simple, maybe just some regular stuff. Glenn agreed, especially since it's my first time with someone else. He said he'll drop me off tomorrow, and I'll make sure to clean up before I come home. No sloppy seconds for you. Sweet dreams, lover. See you in the morning. Get ready for some fun. Love you, Frank. I felt like I was going to throw up. I never realized I was married to such a foolish woman. Sure, Sharon had always been a bit clueless, but that was part of her charm. Now, her cluelessness was on full display, and it cost her our marriage and maybe her kids. There's no way she could think I'd ever take her back, after letting some guy have her and rubbing it in my face. I'm sure everyone at the party had a blast at my expense. I was angry, hurt, and embarrassed, and my wife couldn't care less. I know I should have just ignored her message, but I couldn't. I called her back, and she picked up after the third ring. Hey, honey, Glenn and I just got comfy in bed, so I can't talk long. Shut up, Sharon. This might be the last time you hear from me. You don't realize what you've done, but you'll find out soon enough. Enjoy your time with Glenn because the consequences will be worse than you can imagine. Understand this, Sharon. Once Glenn touches you, our marriage is done. Do you hear me? Done. I never thought I'd say it, but I hate you more right now than I ever loved you. I can't wait to be done with you completely. My lawyer will contact you next week. I hung up. Within 30 seconds, she called again. I let it go to voicemail once more. Frank, she sounded like she was about to cry. Why are you acting like this? How could you say those things to me? I'm your wife. Can't you just let me have this one night? Glenn and I just started, and now you're ruining it for me. I don't know if I can enjoy being with him like I want to now. We're not getting divorced. I'll be home in the morning and we can talk this out. I'd come home now, but I promised Glenn I'd stay with him tonight. Please understand, I have to do this. He got my key and I promised him he could have me. He really wants to do that now. Oh, yay. Right now as I'm talking to you, I have to go. Glenn is ready to, he's ready. I love you, Frank. I'll always love you. Please don't say our marriage is over when I do this with him. I can't help it, honey. He's already here. Oh, God. Please. Oh, yes. Please try to understand. And I heard her whisper to him, Oh, yeah, Glenn. This is my night. See you in the morning, darling. Once again, I couldn't resist. I called her back, and this time it rang several times before going to voicemail. It was clear that Glenn was with my wife, so I left a message. From your last voicemail, I can tell Glenn is already with you, and you're enjoying it. You can spend the night with him, experiencing all the new sensations he's giving you. Sharon, you've shattered my heart, and I'll never forgive you. It's great that you could keep your promise to Glenn, a man you just met, but you couldn't keep your marriage vows to me, who's loved you and stayed faithful for over 10 years. I don't even recognize you anymore. You won't see me in the morning, and you might never see me again, but you'll receive divorce papers next week, and I'll be charging you with adultery. Now that Glenn is doing what only I should be allowed to do, you're officially a cheater. You can cheat with any man you want from now on, but in case you care, you've lost me forever, and I'll definitely keep that promise. Sharon didn't return my call. I know how absorbed she gets during closeness. She enters a world where nothing else matters except her and the man she's with. They were completely focused on each other by now. I'm not sure if she got my last message, but it doesn't matter. The damage is done, and our marriage is finished. There's no way I'll ever take her back after she disrespected and humiliated me like that, making a mockery of our marriage. I finished the rest of the six-pack. Sharon was loud. That's how she was with me, and I'm sure she's the same with Glenn. Anyway, the beer helped, and I eventually fell asleep, tears still streaming down my face. I woke up about 4 hours later, and reality hit me hard. My wife had taken a lover, and now I needed to figure out how to protect my kids, get her out of my life, and make everyone at that party as miserable as possible. We live in Biloxi, Mississippi, a beautiful town on the Gulf of Mexico. Since Mississippi allows divorce based on adultery, I could avoid paying alimony and maybe even get custody of my children. I needed a top-notch lawyer, and I needed one fast. I took a shower and changed clothes. At 7:30, I called my mother to fill her in on what was happening. She was just as surprised as I was about Sharon's actions. She had the kids for the weekend and assured me she wouldn't say anything to them. I told her I'd pick them up once I had a plan. I assumed Sharon would likely get custody, at least for now. It's hard to admit, but she's been a good mother and wife up until last night. After I hung up with my mom, I went to the diner nearby for breakfast. As I was parking and heading towards the door, my phone rang. It was Sharon. I debated answering, but decided against it, letting it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message, though. Instead, she called back immediately, repeatedly until she finally left a message, sobbing. "Frank, answer the damn phone. Talk to me. What do you mean I may never see you again? And what's all this talk about divorce papers? You can't leave me, Frank. We have 3 precious kids who need us both. Why did you tear up our marriage license and smash your wedding ring? I gave you that ring on our wedding day and you promised to wear it forever. It's a symbol of our eternal love. I knew you'd be a bit upset with me, but I never expected you to go this far. Frank, I love you deeply, but I really needed that special night with Glenn. It meant a lot to me. He made me feel alive and young again. I forgot how exhilarating it is to laugh and scream at the same time. But, as incredible as last night was, you're the only man for me, Frank. I know how to make it up to you and ease your hurt feelings. Please come home so I can show you how much I love you and make things right." She started crying, and it was hard to make out her words. "Frank, why can't you see? I just needed one night with someone new, to feel desired and wanted again. It felt amazing to know another man desired me and found me beautiful enough to want me. Please, Frank, try to understand. It was just a moment, nothing more. Please talk to me, I love you. You and our kids mean everything to me." Her voice grew weaker. "It was just act, Frank. Oh God, we just had closeness. That's all, Frank. We just did it." And she continued sobbing until the message ended. I stood outside the diner, completely stunned. Had Sharon been harboring these feelings throughout our entire marriage, and now, in her mid-30s, they suddenly surfaced? Sharon is still as beautiful as ever, standing at 5'5", weighing 130 pounds, with dark blonde hair that falls to her shoulders and light blue eyes. She has a fantastic figure. Her breasts aren't too big or too small, and while her hips may be a bit wider after having 3 kids, she still turns heads wherever she goes. So, what's this nonsense about needing to feel desired by another man? I've always shown her how much I love and desire her. I surprise her with flowers, take her out on dates at least once a week, and tell her every day how beautiful she is and how much I love her. Until last night, our bed life had been amazing. Or so I thought. We made love at least 3 times a week, and I always made sure she had 1 or more peeks. What did I miss? I'd lost my appetite, but I went into the diner anyway. I found an empty table and ordered scrambled eggs, toast, and black coffee. I barely touched my breakfast, but drank at least 6 cups of coffee. I'd never felt so lost, empty, and devastated in my life. I'd heard people say they wished they were dead, and now I understood what they meant. The only thing keeping me going was the thought of my children. I had to live for them. I had to navigate through this living nightmare that Sharon had created and build a future for them. That thought alone filled me with determination. I would persevere. I just needed to figure out how. Sharon called my phone about 20 times that day, but I always let it go to voicemail. She pleaded with me to understand, but not once did she apologize for her actions. She never admitted to making a mistake. Instead, she insisted that she needed that one night and that it was my responsibility to support her. They only had closeness 3 times that night, and once more in the morning. She mentioned being worried that she hadn't turned her phone off in time, and I might have overheard them the first time, right as Glenn did his job. She hoped I hadn't heard too much. She really knew how to hurt me deeply. I couldn't believe she could be so foolish. However, on the bright side, I now had solid audio evidence of her infidelity to use against her in court. While I wasn't sure if it would be sufficient, the recordings were very convincing and left no room for doubt. I planned to find a good lawyer the next day and gather all the necessary information. I visited my children at my mom's place. She told me Sharon had already called to check on the kids and ask about my whereabouts. Mom explained I was upset about what had happened and didn't want to see or talk to Sharon. Apparently, Sharon started crying, saying I didn't understand. Mom told her no man would understand a wife flaunting an affair in her husband's face. Sharon asked if she should pick up the kids, but Mom suggested it might be best for them to stay a few more days until things calmed down. The kids were happy to see me, but wondered where their mom was. I told them she was busy with something important to her and that they would be staying with Grandma a bit longer. We played games and had dinner together before I hugged and kissed them goodbye and returned to my motel. Tomorrow was going to be a hectic day. Before calling it a night, I had one more thing to do. Well, more like a quick drive-by. As soon as I spotted my house, tears welled up again. I cried for what was lost, knowing it was gone forever. I was surprised to see no unfamiliar cars in the driveway. Though there might be one in the garage, seeing only the kitchen light on downstairs made me think Sharon was alone, at least for tonight. And then it hit me. I still had feelings for her. No, I wouldn't take her back after what she did. But it pained me deeply to imagine her betraying me with another man. I tried to resist the urge to spy on her, but I gave in. Parking a block away, I walked back to peek through the kitchen window. She sat at the table, an empty bottle of Grey Goose beside her. Her hair was messy, mascara streaked down her face. Wearing a robe, she rested her head on the table, eyes closed. It was clear she'd been crying, surrounded by a pile of tissues. For a moment, I felt sorry for her, but then I remembered her betrayal and my sympathy vanished. I wanted to lash out, but instead I walked back to my car and drove off. There was a hint of satisfaction. Maybe she was starting to realize the gravity of her actions. If she wanted pity, she could call her lover, Glenn. Monday arrived early, and I had a busy agenda. At the diner, I had eggs, toast, and coffee, and this time I finished everything. After that, I called my mom and talked to each of my kids, reassuring them of my love and promising to see them soon. Then, I contacted work and informed my executive assistant that I'd be handling personal matters for the next couple of days. I let her know she could call or text me if anything urgent came up. She sensed something was wrong, but I didn't elaborate, promising to explain later. Back during my final year at Ole Miss, I shared an apartment with two good friends, Douglas Prather III and Maxwell McCrae. We formed a strong bond, and though we don't see each other often, we've stayed connected over the years. My major was in computer science, Doug studied business administration, and Max pursued a career in law. I called Doug first and asked if both of them could meet me for drinks around 5. I needed their advice on a serious matter, and Doug agreed to reach out to Max. We arranged to meet at the lava bar by the beach. I arrived early, and shortly after 5, Max arrived, followed by Doug 10 minutes later. We greeted each other warmly and found a table on the patio, ordering drinks and raising a toast. "What's going on, Frank?" Doug inquired. "Your call sounded serious." "Sharon cheated on me and made sure I knew about it," I confided, then proceeded to tell them the whole story. "Dang, that's rough," Doug exclaimed. "I can't even wrap my head around her doing something like that," Max chimed in. "Same here, but she went ahead, no shame or regret, and she still thinks I'm overreacting. Can you believe that?" "So, what's your plan?" Max inquired. "I want a divorce, and I want to teach Glenn a lesson, whoever he is, along with the other jerks at the party. But more than anything, I want to fight for custody of my kids." "Getting custody might not be simple, Frank," Max cautioned. "Unless she's been a neglectful mother. If she's bringing random guys home and having affairs while the kids are there, then you might have a case. Otherwise, if she's generally a good mom, she'll likely get custody, and you'll be on the hook for child support." "I can handle that as long as I can still spend time with them whenever I want," I replied. "That's feasible," Max nodded. "The courts usually prefer both parents involved in raising the kids, if they're both fit parents." "What about finances?" Doug asked. "Sharon stays home with the kids, and you're likely making a good 6-figure salary. What's in your accounts? Checking, savings, investments, 401ks, IRAs?" "I've got all of that, and when you add it up, it's probably around 700 or 800 grand, maybe a bit more." "The court will likely split that evenly. Give Sharon the house and custody. But if you can prove she cheated, which Seems like you've got a good case. You might not have to pay alimony, Max explained. Do you happen to know a really good divorce lawyer? As a matter of fact, one of the partners at my firm is one of the top family law attorneys in Mississippi. Her name is Maddie Simmons. Want me to set up a meeting for you? Absolutely. The sooner the better. In the meantime, Doug suggested, I'll see what I can do to safeguard some of your finances. Send me all the details on every dollar you've got, and I'll start working on it. We raised our glasses once more, had a couple more drinks, and bid each other goodnight. Suddenly, I felt better than I had since this whole ordeal began. As I drove back to my motel, my mind racing with all the tasks ahead, my phone rang. It was Sharon. After a brief hesitation, I pulled over to answer. What's up, Sharon? I asked, getting straight to the point. What do you think I want, Frank? I want my husband back home where he belongs. I could hear the tears in her voice. Well, unfortunately for you, your little escapade with Glenn makes it impossible for me to ever come back home again, I replied firmly. She burst into tears. Don't say that, Frank. Don't you dare. It was just one night away from you after 10 years. And that's not enough for a divorce. Think again. Adultery is definitely grounds for divorce in Mississippi. Why do you keep calling it adultery? It was just one night with someone new, just a fling. When a married woman sleeps with someone new, whether it's for a night or a second, it's adultery. I warned you the moment Glenn got with you, and I meant every word. Oh God, please, Frank, you can't do this to me. You brought this upon yourself, Sharon. What happened to you? Are you on pills? Did you have a mental breakdown, or are you just unbelievably foolish? It seems like you were so fixated on the idea of being with another man that you didn't care about our kids or what I wanted. You just had to do it. Well, you did. And now you have to face the consequences. I thought we were truly happy, with a nice home, 3 great kids, and a wonderful bed life. And then you tore it all apart by sleeping with a stranger and throwing it in my face. We were always happy, Frank, and we're happy now. I just wanted to see what it was like to be with another man for one night in our long life together. Just to experience someone new with no harm done, that's all. No harm? You don't grasp the extent of the damage you've caused. In one night, you've completely shattered our family due to your selfishness. You've torn our lives apart, leaving them in irreparable pieces. First off, Sharon, you've broken my heart, showing blatant disregard for my feelings. Remember me, your husband, the one who has loved you unconditionally since the day we met, the man who works tirelessly every day to provide the life you desire for you and the kids. You betrayed me to be with a stranger, disregarding the vows we made a decade ago. You pledged your body to me in front of our families, friends, and before God. Yet, last night you made it clear that you would do as you pleased, regardless of my pleas. Essentially, you told me to go to hell, insisting on doing whatever you wanted without considering my feelings. I never intended for it to come across like that, Frank. I don't know why, but I didn't realize I was hurting you. I just wanted to try something new. I love you. It wasn't about you. It was something I felt I needed. And that's where you went wrong. You disregarded your husband entirely. Your night with Glenn was solely about you and him, with no regard for me or our children. I felt I deserved a special night just for myself. Well, congratulations, Your Majesty. You got your special night, but it cost you your marriage to me and probably damaged your reputation with family and friends. Maybe someday I'll forgive, but I'll never forget, and I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. You called me a big baby for being upset about your adultery. Let's see how you handle it when everyone hears you admit to letting Glenn have you 4 times while you both pleasured each other twice. Oh no, Frank. Please, you can't do that. My parents would be devastated. Sorry, Sharon, you should have thought about that before you acted. You made your bed, now you have to lie in it. You seem to think what you did is no big deal, like getting a traffic ticket or forgetting to return a library book. You threw away a solid 10-year marriage with someone who truly cared for you, all for a one-night stand with a stranger. Was it worth losing your family over? I didn't think I'd lose everything, Frank. I thought you'd love me enough to understand and support me. No sane person would support their spouse having an affair just because they wanted something new for a night. It doesn't work like that, and you should have known better. What were you thinking, Sharon? What made you do it? I didn't think it would bother you that much. Seriously, Frank, what's the big deal about me sleeping with another guy a few times? It didn't change anything down there. It's still yours, waiting for you to reclaim. And what I did with Glenn last night doesn't mean I love you any less. I heard about couples swapping partners at the Vanderlinks, and it just clicked with me. Why couldn't a husband or wife have a night with a total stranger, someone safe, and enjoy it? I wanted to try something new just once, and then I'd commit to you again. But it showed a lack of respect for me. I begged you not to, but you went ahead and did it anyway. You excluded me from something we've shared for over 10 years. Those vows meant everything to me. The connection between us brought 3 wonderful children into our lives who love us both. We were a family, committed solely to each other. But now you've shared the part of you that made those kids with someone else. And for what? A fleeting thrill, a one-night fling? You call it a single event I should move on from, but to me, it's a complete betrayal of our family, our promises, and any respect you once had for me. You wanted someone else, and you got it. But in doing so, Sharon, you tossed away everything we held dear. Part of me still cares, but I can't be with you anymore. Why are you being so stubborn, Frank? Can't you see it was just something I needed? Nothing's changed between us. Everything's different, Sharon. You're not mine alone anymore. I begged you not to do this. I can't just forgive and forget. You betrayed me, and that's a wound that won't heal. I'm getting a lawyer and filing for divorce tomorrow, citing your adultery. I'll name Glenn and everyone else involved. And imagine the fallout when your friends find out you're responsible for their social circle falling apart. Go to hell, Sharon, and take your flings with you. As soon as I stepped into Maddie Simmons Esquire's office, I felt like I had finally found the right lawyer to guide me through the mess my life had become. She was direct and no nonsense, wasting no time in getting to the heart of the matter. She wanted to know why I was seeking a divorce and what I hoped to achieve from it. I explained that I expected to divide my assets with Sharon, possibly giving her our home in exchange for less cash. I also acknowledged that despite filing for adultery, winning full custody of my kids was unlikely. However, I insisted on having unrestricted access to them and avoiding alimony payments. I played the audio evidence I had of Sharon's betrayal, where she admitted her actions with Glenn repeatedly. Miss Simmons shook her head in disbelief, finding it hard to believe that my wife would be so careless as to confess her affair in voicemails that could be used against her in court. We may need a voice recognition expert to confirm it's your wife's voice, she explained. But unless we encounter an unreasonable judge, these recordings should be admissible as evidence. We spent the rest of the hour discussing my goals regarding Glenn and the others at the wife-swapping party. She doubted we could win any money from them, but she could find a way to expose their activities publicly and embarrass them enough to hurt them. I told her that would be satisfactory for me. I paid her a retainer and requested she serve Sharon promptly. She assured me it wouldn't take long and promised to inform me beforehand. On Tuesday afternoon, I picked up my kids from my mom and took them back to Susan's house. When she greeted them, she hugged and kissed them warmly, then reached out to me, but I stepped back, causing her to tear up and plead with me to stay. I explained I couldn't, but I thought it was best for the kids to be home with her, and I planned to pick them up on Friday for the weekend. Sharon seemed to be struggling, and I sympathized, but she brought it upon herself, and her tough time wasn't worse than what I was experiencing because of her. On Wednesday, I returned to work. I knew I couldn't neglect my job. I needed it more than ever, not just for the income, but for the mental distraction. If I dwelled too much on the pain and self-pity from Sharon's betrayal, I feared I'd lose my sanity, something I couldn't allow for the sake of my kids. On Thursday, I met Doug and Max again, this time for dinner at the Half-Shell Oyster House, where I loved their charbroiled hand-shucked oysters and dirty martinis. During our meal, I updated them on my kids and the divorce proceedings. Doug had looked into ways to protect some of my money, and I authorized him to proceed. It might not be much, but it would be helpful in the long term. Together, we brainstormed a simple plan to stir up trouble in the wife-swapping club without risking legal trouble. Max had a friend who worked as a reporter for the Biloxi Sun-Herald newspaper. He believed that if I provided him with the Vanderlinks' address and the times the wife-swapping group met, he could uncover the names of some participants. He suggested writing an editorial revealing that wife-swapping was more prevalent in Biloxi than people realized. By hinting at certain business owners' involvement without explicitly naming them and getting photos of couples entering and leaving meetings, we could create enough controversy to cause problems for the group. I shared the limited information I had with Max, and he agreed to start investigating. With that plan in motion, we said our goodbyes until next time. My weekend with the kids was fantastic. We went shopping for new clothes, watched a Disney movie at the Grand 18 in D'Iberville, and spent a whole day at the beach, swimming and playing frisbee. My children were my top priority, and I promised myself I'd always be there for them. Monday morning, Max called me. His friend at the Sun Herald newspaper liked the story idea and was figuring out how to get photos of the couples entering and leaving the Vanderlinks' house. Even if their faces were blurred, people would catch on quickly in a small town like this. If everything worked out, it could make headlines by the end of the week. I kept my fingers crossed. Sharon kept calling, begging me to come back home, promising she'd do anything to make things right. But she never once apologized or admitted her mistake. On Wednesday, my lawyer informed me that Sharon would be served at our home Friday morning. Then Doug told me he found a way to protect about a third of my money by putting it in my kids' names. Finally, Max called to say his friend discovered that the swinging couples were meeting again Friday night at the Vanderlinks. He planned to stake out across the street in an unmarked van, snapping photos of everyone. He also wanted to interview me once more about the party. If everything went smoothly, the article would hit the paper next week. I felt a lot better than I had in a while. Friday arrived, and I waited for the expected call from Sharon after she got the divorce papers. True to my expectations, it came. At 2:30, my lawyer phoned to tell me she'd been served. Not long after, my phone rang again, and seeing the caller ID, I knew it was Sharon. I chuckled to myself, wondering what she wanted. Initially, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but I changed my mind. "Hey Sharon, what's going on?" I answered. "What on earth did you do, Frank?" Her tone was far from friendly. "I filed for divorce, just like I said I would," I replied. "And I told you there wouldn't be a divorce. And you filed for adultery? Spending one night with another man isn't adultery, Frank." "I have to disagree with you there, Sharon. According to Mississippi law, having closeness with someone other than your spouse is considered adultery. And Glenn definitely had it with you." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Why are you being so cruel, Frank? I love you. All Glenn did was have closeness with me a few times. It was just a fling." "Oh, my mistake, Sharon. I must have misunderstood that having closeness outside of marriage isn't adultery. How could I have gotten that wrong? Let it go, Sharon. It's done. I warned you countless times and pleaded with you not to do it, but you did it anyway. Now you have to face the consequences. And soon enough, you'll realize that your troubles aren't over yet. Goodbye, Sharon. Have a miserable life." And I hung up. The toughest part was that I still had feelings for Sharon. Maybe I always would, but I couldn't trust her anymore, and I couldn't stay married to someone who cheated. I knew I shouldn't go to the Vanderlinks on Friday night, but I couldn't resist driving by once to see what was going on. I also wanted to check if Sharon's car was there, even though I doubted she'd attend the party this time. Her car wasn't there, but she could have gone with someone else. They usually only allowed couples, but they made an exception for her once, so who's to say they wouldn't do it again? I spotted a van parked across the street, likely where the reporter was. I wished him luck in exposing them. Results came quickly. The next afternoon, Max's reporter friend called, asking for some insider information, which I gladly provided. He mentioned he took over 100 photos and recognized over a dozen prominent couples from the city. Oddly, they weren't the same couples seen leaving the residence 2 hours later. Max had given him a photo of my wife, and he confirmed she wasn't among those entering or leaving the Vanderlinks' house. He wanted me to describe what I saw and experienced when I was inside the home during one of the key parties. I did my best to explain how the keys were placed into a bowl, even though I never witnessed the part where men picked a key and left with the woman it belonged to. I got a good idea of what happened from my wife's description and overhearing other couples' conversations about past parties. Before we ended the call, he asked if he could hint that he knew of a marriage that ended because of the parties, leaving kids to deal with their parents' divorce. I said he could, as long as no names were mentioned. The article came out in the Sunday edition of the paper, causing quite a stir. It was front-page news with a large photo of couples entering and leaving, their faces blurred. The story continued for 4 more pages with many additional photos. Despite efforts to hide faces, it was easy to identify participants from their cars and clothes, as they were prominent members of Biloxi society. By Monday, the story was the talk of the town. Several ministers were interviewed about the decline in morality, and civic leaders condemned the situation. Lawsuits were filed, but nothing came of them. Some businesses lost customers, and many couples ended up in divorce court. To me, it was all amusing. A fitting payback for the pain I endured from losing my wife and family. Even if people realized I was cheated on, I didn't care. I had my revenge, and that was all that mattered. Sharon kept trying to win me back for months, but I was firm in my decision. The divorce went through, and I got joint custody of our kids. We split the time with them, when I have them for the month, Sharon gets them on weekends, and vice versa. It's not ideal, but we're managing. Since Sharon didn't contest anything in the divorce, I decided not to share the recordings of her confessing her affair with her family or friends. As for the couples involved in the key parties, some ended up divorcing and leaving town, maybe because of the scandal. Sharon has started dating again, though I'm not sure she fully understands why her actions hurt me so much. But that's her problem now, and I wish her future husband luck. I've gone on dates with a few nice women, but I haven't found the right one to settle down with yet. Some have suggested moving in together, but I'm still cautious about giving a woman a key to my place.